Hi, and welcome again to Doing It Right. I'm so glad you're joining me today, and you know what this show is about. I only interview people who have risen to the top of their careers, wherever they are in space. It can be a janitor who's the top janitor. It doesn't matter. There's leaders at every level. And today, I am so thrilled to have my guest, Ricky Dickson, who is the former CEO and president of Bluebell Creameries. Bluebell ice cream. How many of you eat Bluebell ice cream? We're going to be talking about that. It's going to be such a fun interview. That's why I wore this crazy shirt. So stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
All right, so Ricky Dickson, I want to welcome you, sir.
Great to be here.
And
Absolutely.
You drove up. Thank you for coming from out of town to be with me today.
Absolutely.
I have to show the book right away.
Okay.
Because we're going to be talking about ice cream a whole lot. So this, my book, his doesn't have all these sticky notes. I had more. I read this book and I couldn't put it down because it's a combination, Ricky, of certainly your story, the story of Bluebell Creamery, but also a man of faith and how you brought that part of you into your everyday workspace. That doesn't easily happen. So let's just get started. And I think my first question, there's so many iconic stories that I read in the book about both of those things. I think I want to ask you, what are some of the innovative flavor ideas? We're going to get right into Bluebell and weave in your faith. But it's a question I've always wondered. The iconic flavors, what are the ones that you've introduced over the years that seem to be the always go-tos?
Well, creating flavors is right in the sweet spot, no pun intended, of what we've been able to do over the years. You have your standard flavors, your homemade vanilla and Dutch chocolate and cookies and cream. But cookies and cream, for instance, was one of those unique flavors way back, early 80s. In fact, Bluebell was the first to package cookies and cream in a half gallon and a pint. We bought Oreos, and we were not able to buy them in bulk, and so we had 2 ladies stand at a hopper and open packages of Oreo cookies all day long, dumping them into the hopper to where they would be grounded up. And so we've come a long way from that point. But creating flavors is really creating magic, and so you would think after so many years, what new could you create?
Sure.
But every year there's that new one right around the corner. What we have throughout the year is people call in or write in with their creative thoughts. We have employees that submit their ideas, and then of course our research and development team is always at trying to come up with a nice combination of whether it be fruits, nuts, chocolates, syrups, variegates. And we home that down to about 15, and then we have our whole sales department go through the process of which ones do they think work. And it's really interesting demographically. Something in Texas might not be something that would be as much of an appealing type of flavor as in Florida. Like a key lime pie in Florida has more of a pull. So you're looking for what can appeal to everyone. At the same time, if there's a market-specific flavor, then we'll home in on that as well. But we try to have 5 to 6, maybe 7 new flavors every year.
I didn't know that.
We wrote about every other month you'll see a new flavor come onto the shelf, and it keeps the ice cream case exciting.
So what's the current flavor?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. Strawberry toasted pastry, and as I mentioned, retired. It's been a year, so now I'm calling in and asking.
But those two are amazing.
Yes, it's a great vanilla ice cream with that little strawberry toasted pastry and sprinkles, and then a strawberry sauce and white chocolate. So
oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's just creating, in my opinion, what we try to say, not just flavors but memories. You're trying to find the ones that really do have a good holding power.
You want to know my favorite?
Yes, I do.
Chocolate.
Chocolate. Okay. Well,
I'm just a chocolate girl.
it's okay.
In the middle of the night, I may go in there and have some chocolate. That's the truth.
Well,
Oh, now you know something vulnerable about me.
right.
I'm curious just about ice cream, which also will go into how Bluebell started. But is there some history about making ice cream?
Well, way back, we started in 1907 as a little butter company. Yes, I know, exactly. Back then, pretty much all the small communities had their own dairies because you didn't have transportation, you didn't have freezers at home.
Right.
And so we started as a butter company, and then about 4 years later, started making ice cream, 2 gallons a day. And we'd put them, in a metal container in a wooden tub and ice and take out it to the community. And of course, you had to eat it because you couldn't freeze it. But
And you're slender.
well, I appreciate that. Hopefully, the camera is doing a good angle on me. But in 1958, we decided to go away from butter and strictly make ice cream and ice cream related, what we call frozen snacks or novelties.
I love the bars, fudge bars.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense with Dutch chocolate.
Well, it is. It's all chocolate.
Yep.
So, how did you join the company? How did you get
Well,
there?
and the book is called One Scoop at a Time, and really that's my journey. I love to tell the story and really believe in my heart that God led me to a certain individual that we were dating. I thought at the time she was going to be the Mrs. Ricky Dickson. She had a passion to want to go to Baylor, and I had a passion to be with her. And so Baylor it was. And we got there, and the first week we were there, we broke up. And so we're now no longer together, but I find myself at Baylor.
Which is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Here with you.
God knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
But so we went on to our second scoop, per se. But it was at Baylor. I had an assignment in a consumer relation class to follow a company for the full semester and then write a term paper on. Went back to the apartment, called my dad and said, I've got this project. Do you have any recommendations of a company that I can follow? And he said, you won't believe, but I just started reading this article as when you called. And so let me start the article over. And so he read it out loud about this little ice cream company in Brenham, Texas called Bluebell. And so
When
I
was
thought,
this? When was this
that
now?
was 1978.
Okay.
So it was a few years before I graduated. And went down and interviewed, and really honestly, it wasn't the ice cream that was the draw. It was the people. It was the culture.
Did you just know it?
You sensed it from the time you walked in. I'm sitting down with the vice president of the company talking about how they relate to the consumer. The president of the company comes in, wants to know, okay, now who are you and why are you here? Bluebell at the time was only in the Houston market and Austin market and had just come to Dallas in 1978. So now I'm right at the time that the iconic brand, as we would call it, or the love for Bluebell was just starting to explode. And you just sense that people really, truly made it as if they were taking it home. And then whatever was left, they would sell. But the passion behind every flavor, they believed they were making memories because you resort back to ice cream that takes you somewhere.
It is a memory. That's true.
So whether it be your grandparents' house or a picnic or a celebration of some kind, or getting over a bad situation, it's not like a good friend there. And at least they're dependable.
A comforting kind of a dish.
Yeah. So at the end of right at the end of my senior year at Baylor, I went back and put an application in, and they said, you come on board. Where do you want to work, Dallas or Houston? And I chose Dallas and decided, because it was brand new, that this would be an exciting place to be. And 43 plus years later, we've just handed in our scoop. And,
it's a great title.
Well, thank you. And it really, truly is. In as I look back, it was God opening and shutting doors and placing me where He wanted me. And so, I think that girl that had that passion, because I don't know if God would have worked something out, but this I truly believe is where He wanted me.
It's kind of cool to have those reflections back, isn't it, Ricky, and see how God's hand just went plop.
Absolutely. No.
So I've talked about culture of organizations on this show before and do workshops on leadership, which is always about the culture because the leaders develop it, right?
That's right.
How did the culture describe it in these terms? As an example, I will say to someone, well, so Ricky, if I were recording a video camera and I can't say anything, I just walk down the halls and I'm hearing things and I'm seeing things. And so walking down the halls or on the production line, however you want to answer this, what did you hear and see?
That's a great question. And I really think it gets to the heart and soul of our company. Okay. I think that it's critical, and you even said it in the opening, to realize that everyone has a purpose and a sense of, being there and doing the right thing, and no matter what the position is. I love Romans 12, talking about none of us are greater than anyone else. We're all in the same capacity. We may have different titles, but if you collectively go together, then you achieve whatever that is to get where you're trying to get. Yeah. And so knowing first names and really investing yourself, no matter the position of whoever that you're talking to, I think is critical in the success of a culture if you're trying to. It's not all about profits. Now, some may say yes, but and profits, obviously, that's what keeps you going. But it really, truly is, what's the vision? And what's the path to get there? And I think investing into your employees is by far the starting block, not the finishing. And sharing with them and going with them, like I say. And so there's a lot of comparisons you can use from Scripture in managing. And whether I don't mean preaching. In fact, I hope my Christian faith was evident by what they saw and not by what I said.
I'm sure it was.
And so but people is where that was my sweet spot. So I loved just walking the floor and engaging myself, hearing their voice, not necessarily listening. And listening, absolutely. So, and that's what I saw. I saw the Cruzy family from 1919 all the way up to 2017. The Cruzy family had run our company, and they're still. Howard Cruzy is still going strong at, I think, 95 years old.
Is that
his son is chairman of our board. So
that's unusual.
Very unusual. Very unusual.
Never went. Well, that's a story in itself. You have so many stories in this book. I'm going to hold it up and mention it one scoop at a time. What fascinated me about this book was just so many messages, and I tabbed. I could have tabbed. I took some out because I knew I didn't have time to go with all of these. But you said at one point, Ricky, you said excuses can become comfortable. I'm just talking about leadership now. Excuses can become comfortable and then become a way of life. That just really hit me. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think that just in your practicing of leadership, when things aren't necessarily going correct, instead of homing up and growing in that, you come up with the excuses on why it's not working and really deflect. And I think if you as an individual, no matter what the situation is, I share in the book about my being asked to move to Oklahoma and this possibility of moving up and being in this new region. And once I got there, I thought, okay, this is exciting, this is great. And then it got really, really quiet. And for days to weeks to months to really into years, there wasn't a talk about this promotion or this new title or this new region per se. And then finally, when I get the phone call, is that we're having this big meeting, and after the meeting, they want to see me. I'm thinking, okay, this is the time. And so I go into the room, and I can tell immediately that there's no balloons or confetti. That the mood in the room was very serious. And in about a 45-minute window, single-spaced, handwritten critique of my performance while I had been in Oklahoma, things I had slipped from doing, things that I wasn't doing that I used to do. Basically, and I would say a complacency, knowingly that this was happening, and I kind of drifted from center, and really do honestly, in a very honest way to say, it was, you get focused on a title and not doing the things you need to be doing. So I went back to the hotel and sat on the end of the bed, and I remember looking up to God saying, you know, I don't understand. You know, you asked me to move here. I came here. I left San Antonio, where I was from, and you know, I didn't sign up for this. And as I'm thinking these thoughts of frustration, excuses, I sensed in my spirit God saying, I didn't move you here for a promotion. I moved you here for a purpose, my purpose.
Oh, wow.
And I'm telling you, it was riveting to think he had a plan for me, and yet I was trying to take over that plan and getting caught up in a title. And so the excuses and all the things that I could have sat there and argued with for 45 minutes, well, gone into an hour and a half or 2 hours probably, I realized, number one, that they cared enough to point those things to me. And number two, God cared enough to say, I do have a plan. Now, don't get so caught up on what your card says, your business card.
It's not really,
it was a changing of my whole attitude.
Really?
It's not necessarily from what you saw me from the outside, but it was what was happening on the inside, because sometimes we put on a good front, but what's happening inside. And so at that point, God, whatever it is you want me to do, if this is the company you still want me with, which I believed, then I will do whatever that task is. Now, fast forward about 5 or 6 years later, when that promotion finally came, it didn't come to me. It went to somebody else, because of the fact that I was now running our plant in Oklahoma, production plant. But for the same reason, I was there not to make ice cream. It was to lead and guide people in making the best ice cream in the country. So,
What would you say is the hardest thing today for senior leaders in running these big organizations, Ricky?
I mentioned profit a minute ago, and obviously, if you're working for a board of directors or a shareholder, that's got to be, you know, it's up there. But I still think understanding the vision of where you're wanting to take the company, and then the strategic plan that backs that vision. But most importantly, stay humble and stay true, because it's there are so many. You're not invincible. There's others that are right behind you, and I do think, especially as a CEO of a company, that you hear it changes when all of a sudden the responsibility is now on your shoulders.
It's all you.
3,500 employees and their families, and as you walk the floor or you're out in the sales area and you're meeting with the sales team, you see their families through them and the responsibility that goes with it. And so I just tried to, I truly believe it was a God thing that He put me there.
For sure.
And so I didn't ever want to lose sight of that. So stay humble, stay true. Again, I mentioned Romans 12 a minute ago. But there's so much truth in that chapter that I resort back to, because we're all the same, and each one of us have a gift and a talent. And so if we collectively go together, work as if we're working to the Lord, then you can and will be successful, especially if you're doing it according to His will.
You know, you would think that today it would be easier to be transparent. But I find so many leaders, just making your point again, who tell me in my coaching part of what I do, workshops are one thing, but the executive coaching part of my work is so important to me personally. I learn so much and hopefully can share a few things. But one of the things I learn consistently is just almost a fear now because of all of the rules, and you could get dinged for this and dinged if you do that and all of these things. So I'm glad you brought that up, and thank you.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a couple of other things that...
And I'll add real quick on that,
please.
because I think it's important. I think that how you walk the floor, or how you engage, not necessarily your words. They're going to hear your words, but they see you for who you are outside those words. And those two should line up. And so I think it's
Well
so
said.
important to, you can talk the CEO talk or the president talk or whatever, but how you again, treat people like you want to be treated. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because today it is different. You may say the wrong thing, but treat people the way you want to be treated, and look at their value. But remember, they're watching. They are watching.
There you go. That whole thing of the shadow of the leader. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear that. Absolutely. So what are some of the strategic, innovative things that you're proud of, that you were a part of or instigated? Ricky?
Well, I won't take credit really of any of them, because collectively we did so much together. But
that's humility.
I think that it's taking some concepts, and we went through a lot in 2015, as we all know. And yet from that, the way we re-looked at things, ice cream is a very a low-risk item, or so we thought.
And to interrupt
Yes.
Purposely,
Yeah.
some people may not know about this challenge. You want to
That's true. And I brought it up.
And you brought it up, so we can talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's important because, to be around since 1907 in itself is just an unbelievable thing. And yet you're going to have bumps along the way. And so in 2015, when we found out that we had listeria in the product, it was, it hit to our core. And it was devastating, again, not just to our employees and to us as individuals, but also to the consumer that had been so faithful. And it was devastating. Yeah. But being the fact that, again, that it was low risk meant that, everything that was in line, we were very, very pleased with. Standards, been inspected and all those things. But when we find it, it was a game changer. And so we tore out the floor, tore down the walls, ceilings, took all the equipment out, and then really rebuilt our plant in Brenham and Oklahoma.
People don't know that.
Yeah, we just put our head down and said, let's just get after it and let's do it right. So from April 21st until September, do it right. That's exactly right. So from April 21st to September 1st, we were completely shut down. But we pulled in microbiologists, we pulled in experts from even outside the ice cream category, but dealt with frozen environments, and really kind of rewrote what we feel is probably, if not the safest program. It's right up there next to it, and very, very proud of that. And so taking over as president in 2017, just really taking the baton and implementing more programs and just trying to, my whole last 7 years of running the company, I would say at least 50% was microbiology, if that makes sense. But at the same time, it was the right thing to do. Yeah. And, when you eat a bowl of ice cream, you don't want to stop and think, is this safe or not? No. You just want to enjoy it.
That'd be awful.
So we test every single product that we make before it ever goes out into the market now. And something that's not, I don't know how many are doing that, but we're going to do it.
But you're doing it.
Yes.
I want to go to some of your top takeaways that I always ask guests to share. And one of them that I so believe in, you said dream big dreams. Absolutely. Where does that come from?
Well, one of my favorite authors is Mark Batterson.
I love him too.
He's just, I read one of his books and then read a second and then reached out, and the next thing I know, we're on a phone conversation together, and we've become very good friends since then. He's up in Washington, D.C., but he has...
What book did you read?
The book that I'm referring to is called If. And in that book, he says two different things. Let's see if I can get this right, but the day you start dying is the day you stop dreaming. And ironically, the day you start living is the day you find a dream worth dying for.
Say that again. That's so good.
The day you start dying is the day you stop dreaming. And ironically, the day you start living is the day you find a dream worth dying for. And he goes on to say, at some point in our life, we quit living out of our imagination and we start living out of our memory. And that's the day we stop creating our future and we start repeating our past. And most importantly, that's the day we quit walking by faith and start walking by logic. And that's the day we walk away with what if possibilities and end up with if only regrets. And so that I use that probably every talk that I talk, because of what he wrote. And yet at the same time, those are powerful words. I really believe God put through him, because I think you have to dream big. He's placed us here for that purpose, but most importantly, dream big, but live for today. Don't get caught up. And I go back to my journey through Oklahoma. It's great to have big dreams, and we have a big God that will guide you through it, but stay focused on the day.
On the day.
Yes.
Sometimes on the hour.
Sometimes on the hour.
Sometimes on the minute.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So cultivate patience. That's another one of your top takeaways.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned a few times you needed to be patient, but so how do you do that if you're a type A, who is just going and blowing, and I have to remind myself, stop it. Calm down. Just take one more step, not 10.
No.
Patience.
I'm right with you on that.
Are you?
I'm absolutely.
You seem so patient.
Well, they're good. I'm glad that's the way it's coming across. I've become more patient, but at the same time, I like to. Boy, let's do it. My wife will tell you when, and I'll change on the dime. If I don't have to have it so far planned out. If something changes, I'll go right with it. And so I call it the squirrel method. Where I'm jumping around.
That's great.
I think the thing that I'm learning, though, even at this phase of life, even now that I'm retired, I really try to say that I'm refiring and not retiring. I look at this as my fourth quarter. So as I walk out of Bluebell, I've got my hand up with the four, like football players do when they leave the field, and knowing that this is the chapter of life that I truly need to give it my all instead of thinking about the rocking chair on a porch. And so that's what's keeping me focused. But at the same time, God never quits molding and shaping and making us. And so patience is such a part of that process. He can see it from a position that I can't. And so,
Thank
patience
goodness.
is hard. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank goodness.
Absolutely. Whether it be the traffic, I can't believe the traffic is here. Well, we don't know what the traffic is keeping maybe us from. To as simple as moving or in a dating process all the way to no matter what it is. But patience is the tough one, but
it's a tough one.
It's critical as well.
So this leads me to a question sometimes I'll ask it now to you. If there's one word this year that you want to own, what would one word be?
Boy, that's good.
Thank you.
I hadn't thought of that one. I would say there's a few that are popping in my mind, but I want to say, can I use two? Remain faithful.
Okay.
Remain faithful. I want to make sure that I'm not missing God in this phase of my life. I knew when I was stepping away from Bluebell, and people said, well, you're 65, you could still keep going, and absolutely could have. I loved what I did, and I loved who I did it with. At the same time, it was the right time, I felt, as a company, as an individual, because I really think God has some great things ahead. I don't know what those are, but I don't want to miss it, so I want to remain faithful. I want to do the things that I need to be doing, that I hear His voice and I sense His touch. And then go out and give it all I have to do it. So that's the first thing. But it's a great question.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
With that squirrel mentality, it's easy. This is not a disciplined life. When you go to work, you go in at 8, you leave whenever, or you go in at whatever. When now every day is different. I have to ask my wife, what's on the schedule? What are we doing today? Because it has changed, especially with the book. And the fallback is if we have nothing planned, then we have grandkids. And so we go and spend time with grandkids. So it's a very win-win situation, but
you're in a
remaining
good space.
Faithful. Yes.
You're in a good space. That's wonderful. So many things. What advice would you give to, let's say, an aspiring leader in the food and beverage industry? What advice and what trends are you seeing happening that you'd tell them?
I think that, and it's some of what we've already said, but I'll go back to the word patience and really understanding what the vision is for the long term. What I loved about Bluebell, it was not to want to be the number one brand overnight. We never went around, and this is me personally, being number one is what everybody wants to say and do.
Sure.
But at the same time, I want to be the very best of what we're doing, where we're doing it. We're only in 23 states, so we still have a lot of landscape in front of us. But are we trying to get there overnight, or are we going to try to get there in the next 50 years? Mm-hmm. What's the vision? And so when you can get a hold of what the vision is, and then the strategic plan to achieve that vision. Mm-hmm. If it's short term, and there are things that we could do today that would definitely launch sales in a way. We could take our product to a warehouse and go nationwide, but would that be long term or short term? So I tell this individual, whoever it might be, that's jumping into the category, if I remember the U.S. Labor Bureau statistics, new companies, 80% make it the first year, 50% make it at the 5-year mark, and only 30 are still around at the 10-year mark. So if you're trying to get into something that you can turn, if that's your goal and your vision, in 3 years you're going to be onto something else, and that's great. But if you're looking for long term, now I'm circling back to the word patience, then map it out. Don't get ahead of yourself. Dream big, but live for today. And do the things that will be able to achieve those goals over the period of time. Because so often you hit those moments, what I call Shark Tank moments. You know, you get to this point, you're doing great, but it's going to take a lot of capital to take you to the next spot, or it's a new market, or it's a new product that you need to complement the one that you have. So you'll have those moments, but at the same time, that's what I saw at Bluebell. We're going to go, and we're going to go into Dallas, and we're going to stay in Dallas until we're ready to go to the next market. And as we grew, we then had more manpower to be able to expand. Mm-hmm. But that's why after, 100 plus years, we're still only in 23 states. We make it and sell it ourselves. We put it on our own trucks. We take it to our own distribution. We put it on our own route trucks, and they go to the store. So
it just sounds like a mom and pop shop in a big way. And Bluebell really is a good ice cream. It is my favorite. I'm not just saying that. Chocolate all the way. How fun. So in closing, is there anything else you'd want to share with the audience before we go?
Well, first, thank you again. This has been great to be able to talk about what I call my family. I love the book in the sense that it allowed me a place that I could actually tell the story of not just the Bluebell story, but my story on how God can really change your life. It's stories and lessons from fear to faith.
Yes.
And that's really what the heart and soul of the book is. When you're in the storm, I talk about Mark 4 when Jesus goes to the front of the boat when they go out on the water, and then the storms come and they go wake him up. And they say, "Don't you care? We're going to die." and I love it. He gets up and he just says, winds be, I'm paraphrasing, but winds be calm, and instantaneously there's no wind. It's one of those first mic drops.
Yeah.
And then he looks and says, "You little faith." And I think really what the lesson there to me is we're going to have storms. Mm-hmm. We're going to have storms. But if we can really cuddle up and sleep and rest in our Savior, we can find the peace that passes all understanding, what we see in Philippians, that even though the rough times come, He will get us through. And so I camp there, and I think that's the message of hope that's really in the heart and center of the book.
And the word hope is a perfect way for me to add to this in closing, Ricky, that Gallup just did a survey of what employees look for across the board, Gallup now, and it was hope. Wow. It was the word hope. It wasn't promotion. It wasn't anything business. It was hope. And thank you for being a president and a CEO of a major company that gave people, and still do, hope.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
I appreciate it.
And it's an honor. And folks, he came from out of town to be on this show today, and I am totally honored. And so I always leave with, if you've watched the show, and you said you did, a Valerieism. So I want to leave you with this, audience. Your character is what you really are. Your reputation is merely what people think you are. You like that?
Absolutely.
I'll say it again. Your character is what you really are. Your reputation is merely what people think you are. And I actually had a situation not so long ago that led me to that Valerieism, Ricky, which was an unfortunate one, but it happens. and where, people disappoint us. People just disappoint us. And then you just have to say, okay, maybe there was a character there that I didn't see. And now I do, and I have a choice of what to do about that. So, audience, listen, I really care very much about doing this show and bringing you wonderful people like Ricky Dickson to share their stories, real people about real stories. And I want to thank you and tell you how much I appreciate your viewership. I love it when you make comments in the show notes, and I encourage you to do that. And those of you who have, and those of you who don't, I reply to every comment, because this is a journey that's been given to me. And I say the same thing you did. This is a God thing to me. It's not that I just went out and said, I've got to have a podcast. But I do have a podcast, and it's always going to be about interviewing wonderful people who maintain their integrity, stay authentic, and do it right. Mm-hmm. And so, until next time, Ricky,
yes.
Safe travels back.
Thank you.
Bless you the rest of your life with you and Anita, who's here today. That's it for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.